Good evening, I'm Ted Hodgkinson, Head of Literature and Spoken Word here at Southbank Centre, and it's my pleasure to welcome you, whether you're here with us in the Purcell Room or joining online, to this International Booker Prize shortlist reading, which is part of our Literature Spring season. It's wonderful to see the Purcell Room sold out for tonight's event, which is the second time in under a month we've sold out this space for literature in translation. The first being an evening with former International Book Prize winner Han Kang, as it happens. From The Vegetarian to last year's winner, Tomb of Sand, the International Booker Prize recognises the finest work of fiction translated into English. The prize is shared equally between author and translator, reflecting the essential role a translator plays in carrying across, to use the root of the word, an entire artistic sensibility into a new language and culture. I know from chairing the prize back in 2020 that it is an epic search, with each of the judges reading every single book submitted and distilling them down to a shortlist through many hours of consideration and deliberation. In fact, this evening is bringing back memories of, as I judged it during lockdown, as one of my fellow judges, Valerie Luiselli, said, our five-way long-distance relationship that was conducted over many long Zoom calls. Another person who knows the process intimately is our host for the evening, the brilliant Merve Emre, who was herself a judge to the prize just last year. Merve Emre is the Shapiro Silverberg Professor of Creative Writing and Criticism at Wesleyan University and the Director of the Shapiro Center for Creative Writing and Criticism. She's the author of numerous acclaimed and award-winning books, most recently The Annotated Mrs. Dalloway. She is widely recognized as one of the finest literary critics of her generation and is a regular contributor to The New Yorker, along with a range of other publications. Merve was last on this stage chairing a conversation with Rachel Cusk, and we're delighted to welcome her back to Southbank Centre. In tonight's event, we'll hear from each of the shortlisted authors and their translators in turn, beginning with readings in the original language and then the same passage in English. We're delighted to have the majority of the authors and translators present tonight, but where that hasn't been possible, short films have been prepared, which, like the event, will feature each of the readings which draw us into the world of the book, followed by a brief interview. As part of our ongoing commitment to making our events as accessible as possible, tonight's event will be live streamed to a digital audience and speech-to-text transcribed, and I'm grateful to Claire Hill for capturing the conversation in real time. All the books that you'll hear about this evening are on sale from Foyles tonight, and there will be a signing straight after the event in the foyer immediately outside the auditorium. Whether you're returning to Southbank Centre or joining us for the first time, I hope you'll check out our upcoming summer season, which includes upcoming appearances from Zadie Smith, Colson Whitehead, Julian Barnes, and many more. But back to tonight. Please welcome to the stage Merve Emre. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Ted, for that generous introduction, and to the Southbank Center for having me. I'm thrilled to be with you all tonight and to immerse myself once more in the International Booker Prize, celebrating the best fiction from around the world, translated into English and published in the UK and Ireland. Although I will add that this year I'm relieved not to have had to read 137 books. I only had to read the 6 that were on the short list, but I went ahead and read the 13 on the long list just to be on the safe side. And I'm happy that we have handed the responsibility for judging the prize over to a new panel. This year's judges are the prize-winning French-Moroccan novelist Leila Slimani as chair, William Blacker, one of Britain's leading literary translators from Ukrainian, Tan Tuan Eng, the Booker shortlisted Malaysian novelist, Parul Segal, staff writer and critic at The New Yorker, and Frederick Studeman, literary editor of the Financial Times. They have done us an extraordinary service. Could we please just have a round of applause for them in absentia? It is a lot of work. I think it is safe to assume that I am in the presence of translated fiction lovers tonight. And if new Nicolson research compiled for the Booker Prize Foundation about who is reading fiction and translation is accurate, it should mean almost half of this audience is under the age of 35. Raise your hand if you're under the age of 35. Look at that. That's pretty good. Good for you. Good for you. I have been under the age of 35 for like 5 years now, so me too. In the words of one of this year's shortlisted authors, Eva Baltasar, translation moves treasures from one place to another, expanding our heritage, leaving no one the poorer. Or, as GauZ put it, translators are essential in opening the door to fictions that come from places that we would benefit from hearing from very loudly and much more often. I will be introducing each author and translator pair in turn, so please give them a warm welcome as they join us on the stage, which absolutely means you should be clapping for each pair, just to make my cues very explicit. First up, we have Guadalupe Nettel, the author of Stillborn, and Rosalind Harvey, who translated the book from Spanish. Okay, don't clap for too long or I get off of my timing, so short clap. Stillborn was described by this year's judges as a novel that takes on the knottiest questions about agency, motherhood, and the precariousness of the body. They said it exerts a magnetic force, and the choices and fates of its characters feel as real as life. Our next duo, Maryse Condé and her translator and husband, Richard Philcox, unfortunately could not be with us in person tonight, but we will get to see them a little later on screen, reading from the book and answering some of my questions. And because they might be watching the live stream, let's also give them a round of applause, please. Their novel, The Gospel According to the New World, dictated in French by Maryse and translated by Richard into English, was described by the judges as a hymn to love, brotherhood, and the fight against inequality. They said the book borrows from the tradition of magical realism and draws us into a world full of color and life. Now, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Cheon Myeong-kwan and Cheon Kim, who are the author and translator of Whale, which was originally written in Korean. They are joined by Se-ro, who will kindly be interpreting for Cheon Myeong-kwan this evening. The judges called Whale a roller coaster adventure through Korean history and culture, and a magical and grotesque epic about life and death, liberty and self-fulfillment, dried fish and red bricks. Our next pairing is Eva Baltasar, the author of Boulder, and Julia Sanches, who translated the novel from Catalan. This is the first time a book from Catalan has made the shortlist. Eva will be joining us in a pre-recorded interview, but please welcome Julia to the stage now. Boulder was described by the judges as a vibrant love story between two women, exploring their relationship to the body and to sensuality, and the moment when the harmony of love breaks down. They said it's a sumptuous exploration of desire, illuminated by inventive and dazzling images, which is a very fancy way of saying it's super hot. And please now join me in welcoming author Georgi Gospodinov and Angela Rodel, who translated his novel Time Shelter from Bulgarian. It's also the first time a book from Bulgarian has been recognized by the prize. The judges said that Time Shelter was an inventive, subversive, and morbidly humorous novel about national identities and the seductive dangers of memory and nostalgia. And last, but definitely not least, we have GauZ, the author of Standing Heavy, and his translator, Frank Wynne, who was also my esteemed fellow judge from 2022. Frank translated Standing Heavy from French. GauZ could not be with us this evening, but he recorded a reading and answered some of my questions earlier. But for now, please welcome Frank to the stage. The judges called this novel a fast-paced, poignant, and funny take on Franco-African history and its complexities and problems, interlaced with wry and surprising takes on current consumer culture. It is also the most accurate description of how I personally shop at Sephora. So, to turn to our readings, I would like to first welcome to the stage Guadalupe Nettel and Rosalind Harvey to read from Stillborn. One more.
Mirar a un bebé mientras duerme es contemplar la fragilidad del ser humano. Escucharlo respirar suave y armoniosamente produce una mezcla de calma y sobrecogimiento. Observo al bebé que tengo frente a mí, su cara relajada y pulposa, el hilo de leche que escurre por una de las comisuras de sus labios, sus párpados perfectos, y pienso que cada día uno de los niños que duermen en todas las cunas del mundo deja de existir. Se apaga sin hacer ruido como una estrella perdida en el universo, entre miles de otras que siguen alumbrando la oscuridad de la noche, sin que su muerte provoque en nadie desconcierto, con excepción de sus parientes más cercanos. Su madre queda desconsolada de por vida, a veces también su padre. Los demás lo aceptan con resignación pasmosa. La muerte de un recién nacido es algo tan común que a nadie sorprende, y sin embargo, ¿cómo aceptarla cuando uno ha sido alcanzado por la belleza de ese ser intacto? Veo a este bebé dormir enfundado en su mameluco verde, con el cuerpo totalmente suelto, la cabeza hacia un lado sobre la pequeña almohada blanca, y deseo que siga vivo, que nada perturbe su sueño y tampoco su vida, que todos los peligros del mundo se aparten de él y el vendaval de las catástrofes lo ignore en su paso destructor. Nada te sucederá mientras yo esté contigo, le prometo, aún sabiendo que miento, pues en el fondo soy tan impotente y vulnerable como él.
Watching a baby as it sleeps is to contemplate the fragility of all life. Listening to its soft breath generates a mixture of calm and awe. I observe the baby before me, its face relaxed, squishy, milk trickling from one corner of its mouth, its perfect eyelids. And yet I know that every day, one of the children asleep in all the cots around the world will cease to exist. It will be extinguished without a sound, like a star snuffed out in the universe, a void amongst the thousands of others that continue to light up the darkness, without its death throwing anyone into disarray. Perhaps its mother will remain inconsolable for the rest of her life, perhaps its father as well. The rest of us will accept the circumstance with astonishing resignation. The death of a newborn is something so common it surprises no one, and yet, how can we accept it when we have been so moved by its beauty? I watch this baby sleep, swaddled in its green sleep suit, its head to one side on the little white pillow, and I wish fervently for it to carry on living, for nothing to disrupt its sleep or its life, for it to be shielded from all the dangers of the world, and for it to be overlooked by the destructive path of life's whirlwind of catastrophes. Nothing will happen to you while I'm here, I promise, knowing, even as I say it, that I am lying, for deep down, I am as helpless and as vulnerable as this baby.
So, That's such a beautiful, I'm actually going to skip the first question that I wrote out and ask something different that question made me think of, which is, as you were reading it, Rosalind, I was thinking, there's a moment where it sounds like it's a prayer, that a prayer is being offered and then that prayer is being taken back, because she knows that it's a lie. Can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to write about the fragility of life?
Okay, so hello everyone, good evening. Yes, this book is dedicated to my dear friend Amelia, whose story I'm telling in this novel. So that is not the only story told there, but it's the main story. And I'm telling exactly what happened to her little baby, the pregnancy, the complicated pregnancy that she had, and how when she was going to face a tragedy, she was facing a tragedy, she managed to transform it into a very meaningful period of her life. And yeah, so I was very impressed, very moved, and inspired, of course, by what she did with her life and the whole family she was able to build. And I wanted to tell this story, to share it with everyone.
For those who haven't read the novel, that's not the only story that's told in it. The story of Alina and her child is braided together with the story of Laura, who undergoes a hysterectomy but then ends up taking care of her depressed neighbor's son. Most novelists would only tell one of those stories. You chose to tell two of them together. Why? What does each teach us about the other?
Well, I wanted to give also a voice to women who decide not to reproduce, to women who decide to remain childless, and all the arguments they can have for that. And I wanted also the narrator, Laura, to be different from me. I didn't want to be the narrator, though she tells it from the point of view of the friend, because I wanted friendship to be at the center of this story, of this book. I wanted women's friendship to be told also. So, but I definitely think that childless women are not enough represented in literature, and I wanted to contribute to that.
If friendship and having children or not having children, if those are the things at the center of the book, something that's in the periphery of it or that's everywhere in it are the politics of femicide, of violence against women. How does that larger political context influence how we think about mothering, being a mother, having children, the fragility of life? How does it affect everything that's at the center of the novel?
Okay. Well, I have to say that I live in a country where 11 women are murdered every day because of gender reasons. That's the official ciphers. We don't know exactly the real number, but we can imagine that it's even larger than that one. And where women are, it doesn't matter to which social class they belong. We are constantly in danger because of that. And also, I think that motherhood is at the crossroads of many social issues concerning gender equality. And I could see that I was in the middle of a hurricane, and I wanted to raise a lot of questions that I have around motherhood and its relation to the right of working, to the right of having a life or having a career, and also salary equality and many other things. So, for instance, what belief is behind the fact that in almost any country there is a paternal leave? No, just that, and many others. Well, that's why.
That's wonderful, thank you. Rosalind, I would describe the tone of Stillborn as extremely tender, but also an extremely controlled first-person narration. And there are moments where it feels almost anthropological, as if we have these two case studies that we are watching unfold. How did you manage to craft the narrative voice such that we could feel it differently when it came to the two women?
I really like that question because it's about voice. And voice is always something that I respond quite powerfully to in a book, and it tends to be the first thing that draws me to want to translate it. I'd be interested to know if other translators on the shortlist feel the same, but it tends to be the first thing that pulls me in, and it has to be compelling and it has to be powerful. And there is a range of voices in this novel. You mentioned before, you used the word braiding before, and one of the things that I think Guadalupe does so beautifully is she makes it seem effortless, but those two stories, those two voices are combined in a way that you never feel that one is dominating. They both give us different perspectives, and they create this beautiful whole. And I think in terms of recreating that, then part of it is just sitting with the novel for a long time, for as long as possible. And there's a certain amount of, I think I described it to somebody the other day who was asking me a similar question as like an empathetic leap of faith. There's a certain amount of empathy that I think this is possibly one of the ways in which literary translation differs. There's some debate about this, but differs from other forms of translation. Because you're living with a novel for so long, there has to be a certain amount of emotional or empathetic connection, even if it's characters with whom you don't agree, even if it's characters whose behaviours are sometimes quite reprehensible. There has to be some kind of connection, and part of that connection involves sitting with those characters, sitting with their voices, hearing them in the Spanish, and it's almost as if you're there with them, and so the recreation comes from imagining how they might speak, were they speaking in English. And obviously some of that comes from your own voice and your own linguistic patterns. Some of the words in here, they're Guadalupe's words, but they're also all my words. It's a duality of voice.
It's another braiding.
Another braiding,
exactly,
yeah.
Happening.
So it's it's an empathetic connection, and then through that there's a sort of ventriloquism that takes place, I think.
That's wonderful. Thank you to both of you. Thank you for this beautiful, beautiful novel.
Thank you.
I realize the problem with this gig is that I'm going to want to talk to each of these pairs for about an hour. So Maryse Condé and Richard Philcox will join us on screen to read from the Gospel according to the New World.
Poussant la barrière de bois qui séparait le jardin de la rue, Maya eut l'impression qu'elle s'engageait dans le périmètre de solitude et de douleur qui, sans nul doute, serait désormais celui de sa vie. Comme elle posait le pied sur le goudron, elle se heurta à Déméter, connue de tout le quartier pour ses beuveries et ses rixes souvent sanglantes. Il était accompagné de 2 acolytes, aussi saouls que lui, et qui braillaient, prétendant avoir vu une étoile à 5 branches planer au-dessus de la maison. Dans un grand emmêlement de bras et de jambes, les 3 bois sans soif étaient vautrés dans le dallo qui charroyait les eaux usées de la ville. Ils ne s'en souciaient pas, et Déméter se mit à hurler un vieux cantique de Noël. « Je vois l'étoile du berger ». Maya ne leur accorda pas un regard. Elle continua sa route, les yeux pleins de larmes. Que se serait-il passé sans Pompette, la chienne de Madame Ballandras, une petite personne arrogante et gâtée qui faisait souvent des siennes? Ce soir-là, elle dépassa la mesure. Une fois Maya disparue, elle se saisit de sa maîtresse par l'hurlet de sa robe et l'entraîna jusqu'à la cabane. La porte était grande ouverte et Madame Ballandras fut témoin le spectacle inattendu, un spectacle biblique. Un nouveau-né gisait sur la paille, entre les sabots de l'âne qui le réchauffait de son souffle. Cette scène se produisait le soir de dimanche de Pâques. Madame Ballandra joignit les mains et murmura « Un miracle! Voilà un cadeau de Dieu que je n'attendais pas. Je te nommerai Pascal. » Pushing open the wooden gate that separated the garden from the road, Maya had the impression she was setting off into a zone of solitude and sorrow which would be her lot for the rest of her life. Setting foot on the macadam, she bumped into Demeter, known throughout the neighborhood for his binge drinking and bloody brawls. He was accompanied by two of his drunken acolytes who were bawling they claimed to have seen a 5-pointed star hovering over the house. In a great tangle of arms and legs, the three rum guzzlers were floundering in the flood channel where the town's wastewaters churned. This didn't seem to bother them, and Demeter began bellowing an old Christmas carol, I can see the shepherd's star." Maya ignored them completely and continued on her way, her eyes brimming with tears. If it hadn't been for the unusual behavior that evening of Pompette, Madame Ballandra's dog, a spoilt, arrogant little creature, one wonders what would have happened. Once Maya had gone, Pompette tugged the hem of her mistress's dress and dragged her to the shed. The door was wide open, and Madame Ballandra witnessed an unusual sight of biblical proportions. A newborn baby was lying on the straw between the hooves of the donkey, who was warming it with its breath. The scene in the stable occurred one Easter Sunday evening. Madame Ballandra clasped her hands and murmured, "A miracle. Here is the gift from God I was not expecting. I shall call you Pascal." Well, Maryse is kind of obsessed with babies and children. If you look carefully at all her books, there's always a baby or a child who appears at the beginning and at the end of most of her novels. I can quote I, Tituba, Black Witch of Salem, where there's Samantha, is Tituba's daughter that she's adopted at the end. And then in Who Slashed Selenia's Throat, it's a baby who is found on a rubbish heap with her throat slashed. It's what fascinates Maryse, I think, is the awakening and personality of a child when confronted with the society around him. That's what fascinates her. She said, "Why does a child say no to everything as it is when it is born?" And that's how I can conclude that answer. No, it's a gospel according to the New World, and the essence is the emphasis is on the New World, which signifies discovery. When Columbus discovered, between quotes, the New World, he thought he'd discovered something new, but in fact, he found the same flaws as those in the world he had left behind. And Pascal discovers the world and the presence of evil. He ends up content with human love instead of changing the world. It's a gospel that's aligned with reality and not exactly a gospel of the apocalypse. No, we don't fight about translation. We are intimate enemies. The author and the translator are two distinct persons, and they seldom meet together. I, as a translator, of course, have lots of doubts and lots of questions about the text. But asking Maryse is a formidable task to explain what she was trying to say in her text. However, I do manage at times. Maryse says she's completely dispossessed of her text by a translation. She's never taught her work in translation at any university. She trusts me as her translator. She never reads the translation in English, and so that's how we get along together.
So we have the translator and the author as braided voices, and the translator and the author as intimate enemies. And you can probably guess which of those couples is married, right? So now I would like to invite to the lectern Cheon Myeong-kwan and Chi Young-kim to read from Whale. Mr. Chun's interpreter, Se-ro, will join me on stage.
금복은 일렁이는 불꽃 속에서 취한 눈으로 스크린을 응시하고 있었다. 불길이 치솟는 가운데서도 영상기는 멈추지 않고 돌아가 스크린에선 계속 영화가 상영되고 있었다. 평생을 죽음의 공포로부터 도망치던 금복은 마침내 자신에게도 죽음이 찾아왔다는 것을 깨달았다. 죽은 자들의 모습이 스크린 위에 겹쳐져 빠르게 지나갔다. 그리고 본능처럼 문득 자신의 딸 춘희의 얼굴이 떠올랐다. 그는 춘희가 아직도 공장에서 벽돌을 만들고 있는지 궁금했다. 자신이 한 번도 제대로 보듬어주지 않았던 딸에 대해 걷잡을 수 없는 회한이 밀려왔다. 하지만 곧 모든 게 너무 늦었다는 것을 깨달았다. 그의 눈에선 어느새 눈물이 흘러내리고 있었다. 마침내 스크린에까지 불길이 옮겨 붙었다. 한때 보잘것없던 산골의 한 소녀였던 그는 자신의 손으로 이룩한 거대한 영화가 눈앞에서 모두 사라지는 것을 지켜보고 있었다. 몸이 점점 따뜻해졌다. 그의 눈앞엔 오래전 그가 고향의 언덕에서 맞이하던 적막한 노을이 지고 있었다. 붉게 물든 낙조 속에서 마을은 한없이 평화로워 보였다. 언덕엔 바람 한 점 불지 않았으며 세상은 이상하리만치 고요했다. 참으로 아름다운 풍경이었다. 무모한 열정과 정념, 어리석은 미혹과 무지, 믿기지 않는 행운과 오해, 끔찍한 살인과 유랑, 비천한 욕망과 증오, 기이한 변신과 모순, 숨가쁘게 굴곡졌던 영역과 성세는 스크린이 불에 타 없어지는 순간 설명할 수 없는 복잡함과 아이러니로 가득 찬 그 혹은 그녀의 거대한 삶과 함께 비눗방울처럼 삽시간에 사라지고 말았다.
Kumbok was gazing at the screen drunkenly, sitting amid the roiling flames. Even as the flames licked the ceiling, the movie continued. Kumbok, who had been fleeing death his entire life, realized that the time had finally come for him. The faces of the dead flashed quickly past the screen. Instinctively, he recalled his daughter Chuni's face. Was she still making bricks at the brickyard? He felt deep regret that he had neglected her, that he had never once embraced her. It was too late now. Tears flowed down his face. The screen caught fire. Kumbok watched the grand accomplishment he had achieved as a worthless girl from a mountain village vanish before his eyes. He felt warmer and warmer. The lonely sunset of his hometown filled the room. The village looked peaceful in the glow of the red setting sun. There wasn't a wisp of wind on the hill, and everything was oddly quiet. It was truly a beautiful sight. The moment the screen burned and disappeared, so too did the brash passion and emotions, foolish confusion and ignorance, unbelievable luck and misunderstandings, horrible murder and years of wandering, lowly desire and hate, odd transformation and contradictions, and the breathless roller coaster of glory and shame. They vanished instantly, like a soap bubble being popped, along with his, or maybe her, enormous life that had been filled with inexplicable complexity and irony.
I'm glad that you read that section on the enormous life, because there is a very funny fixation on bigness in this novel. And at one point, your irresistible female protagonist, who gets ahead by trading one man for another, says, "I have only one principle I live by: small, humble things are embarrassing." So what is so attractive and unembarrassing about big things and big lives?
거대한 것에 대한 유머스러운 집착이 소설 속에서 보이는데요. 그 매력적인 주인공이 나는 조그마한 겸손한 것들이 부끄럽게 생각을 해요. 라고 대사가 있는데 작가님께 거대한 큰 것이 무엇이 매력적으로 느껴지시는지.
예, 이 소설은 과거로부터 현대로 이행하는 시기에 있었던 그런 이야기입니다. 그리고 그 변화를 다루고 있고 그 거대한 원시성이 쓰러지는 그런 슬픔과 안타까움도 담겨 있고요. 저는 현대로 넘어오면서 세상은 점점 더 작아지고 세밀해지고 오히려 크고 거대한 것들은 적응하기가 어렵다고 생각해요. 그래서 여기에는 그 거대한 것들이 적응하지 못하고 사라져가는 것에 대한 그런 슬픈 정조가 있습니다. 예. 그러니까 저는 그런 것들에 대한 그리움이나 이런 것들을 담아내려고 했던 것 같습니다. 예.
This novel is dealing with moving from the past, going into the current and future, and the collapse of large, big, archaic, primitive things, and the sadness, the sorrow, how unfortunate that is that I feel is all contained in the novel. That now in the current world that we live in, smaller things, more refined things are thriving, and perhaps the bigger things, grander things, they can't adapt and they can't survive in the current environment. So there is this underlying sad sentiment and my sense of missing these things.
Another large form, it occurs to me, is the epic. And one way to think about this novel is as a contemporary epic, and one that is told to us through oral narration. It's framed as someone telling us a story with stories within the stories, a very episodic structure, lots of digressions, many of them whimsical and often untrustworthy. Why that form for a story about both the comedy and the tragedy of bigness?
거대한 구조에 연급을 해서 이제 현대 에픽 소설이라고 볼 수 있는데 말로 서술을 많이 하고 본론에서 벗어나고 변덕스러운 얘기도 신뢰 못하는 얘기는 많은데 왜 그런 형제 구도를 사용을 해서 이렇게 거대한 움직임, 코미디든지 비극이든지 그런 형태 속에서 이야기를 에피소드 풍으로 풀어나가셨는지.
그거는 아마 제가 매우 자유로운 상태에서 글을 썼기 때문인 것 같아요. 왜냐하면 이것은 제가 처음 쓴 소설이었고 저는 문학 공부를 한 적도 없었고 그래서 그 당시에 저는 이 소설을 누가 읽을 거라는 사실 별 기대도 하지 않았고 그래서 그냥 제 마음이 내키는 대로 썼는데 사실 특별히 뭘 하고 싶은 얘기도 없었어요. 그러다 보니까 또 못할 얘기도 없었고 그래서 제가 아는 온갖 이야기들을 다 끌어오고 그리고 또 제가 좋아하는 온갖 형식들도 다 한 군데 모아서 그렇게 이야기를 쓰다 보니 이런 스타일의 이야기가 된 것 같습니다.
I think that's because I wrote this in such a free and liberated state. This was the first novel that I wrote. I never studied literature before. I had no expectations that anyone was going to read this. So I just wrote wherever my heart followed. And there wasn't even really much that I wanted to say, so therefore there was not much that I could avoid either. So I brought in all the stories that I wanted to say, I brought in all the formats and the structure, and I brought them all into one place, which is, I believe, why it came about, this structure.
It's wonderful. I had a different question for you, but now, given the answers by the translators in the previous panels, not a braided voice, not an intimate enemy, but a secret third thing. What is the relationship between the translator and the author for you? And you have to come up with something I can distill into 2 words.
Yeah, that's high pressure right there.
Yeah.
I think I think a lot of my fellow translators probably believe the same thing. I'm just a conduit to the author's voice, and the thing that made it so fun to translate this book was, like Mr. Chun said, it's so many different styles, it's rollicking, it's hilarious, and so I got to really kind of exercise those different muscles in my own writing. And I had a genuinely great time doing that.
So a muscular conduit.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, all 3 of you. All right, now we will hear Eva Baltasar read from Boulder on the screen, and I will be joined on stage by her translator, Julia Sanches.
Cheon, Chiloé, una nit de fa molts anys. Les 10 passades. Ni cel, ni vegetació, ni oceà. Només el vent, la mà que tot ho pren. Devem ser una dotzena de persones, ànimes. En un lloc com aquest, en aquesta hora, de les persones se'n pot dir ànimes. L'embarcador és petit i fa pendent. L'illa s'entrega a l'aigua en blocs de formigó on se subjecten, un al costat de l'altre, alguns amarradors. Semblen els caps de formes dels claus descomunals que fermen aquest moll al fons del mar. Res més. La quietud dels illencs m'esbalaeix. Seuen sota la pluja, escampats, amb embalums grossos com baguls a tocar. Es cobreixen amb plàstics resistents al vent. Mengen en silenci, un termo entre les cames. Esperen. La pluja els percudeix com si els maleís. Se'ls escola gep avall i forma rierols que baixen fins al mar, boca immensa, mai cansada de rebre i empassar. Fa un fred curiós. En dec haver begut perquè me'l noto, fanàtic, combatiu, sota la pell i més endins, els arcs que construeixen els òrgans entre ells. Illencs incomprensibles. M'hi he estat 3 mesos, cuinant en uns campaments d'estiu per adolescents. Al vespre, pedalava fins al poble i prenia un aiguardent al bar de la pensió. Gairebé cap dona. Ritual de treballadors. Les dents tacades que saluden, els ulls negríssims dels arbres genealògics crescuts a poc sobre la pedra salabrosa parlant amb mi des de les taules. Parlant per tots els morts.
Cheon, Chiloé, a night years ago, sometime after 10, no sky, no vegetation, no ocean, only the wind, the hand that grabs at everything. There must be a dozen of us, a dozen souls. In a place like this, at a time like now, you can call a person a soul. The wharf is small and sloped. The island surrenders to the water in concrete blocks with a number of cleats bolted to them in a row. They look like the deformed heads of the colossal nails that pin the dock to the seabed. That's all. I'm amazed at the islanders' stillness. They sit scattered under the rain beside large objects the size of trunks. Swaddled in windproof plastic, they eat in silence with thermoses locked between their thighs. They wait. The rain pounds down as though cursing at them, runs along their hunched backs and forms rivulets that flow into the sea, the enormous mouth that never tires of swallowing, receiving. The cold feels peculiar. It's possible I've drunk some of it myself, since I can feel it thrashing and bucking under my skin, and also deeper inside, in the arches between each organ. Impenetrable islanders. I've been here for 3 months, working as a cook at a couple of summer camps for teenagers. In the evenings, I would cycle to town and drink aguardiente at the hostel bar. There were barely any women. It was a worker's ritual. Stained teeth bared in greeting. The jet black eyes of every family tree that's managed to grow on this salty rock speak to me from their tables. They speak to me for all of the dead.
Jo crec que els lligams són totalment compatibles i que potser n'hi podria haver d'altres, com és la relació que també té la Boulder, la protagonista de Boulder, amb el paisatge, no? Al final són dues maneres que té ella de connectar amb si mateixa. El que passa que en el cas de la feina, que és aquest treballar amb els aliments crus, no? Amb la matèria que encara està viva d'alguna manera, a ella li serveix per relacionar-se també amb el passat. I, en canvi, a través del sexe, es relaciona amb si mateixa totalment en el present. I quan va cap enfora, quan va cap al paisatge, hi ha aquesta projecció més cap al futur. Crec que són les tres formes que té de poder-se relacionar amb la seva identitat. Jo crec que no podem confiar en la Boulder. No es pot confiar en cap personatge. Alternativa? Mira, jo crec que en la novel·la hi ha com dues maternitats molt contraposades, no? La de la Samsa, que és una dona molt coherent i, segons el meu punt de vista, molt poc interessant com a personatge, però que a mi em calia per parlar de la Boulder, que vol ser mare i ho reclama, i ho és, i amb molta alegria i molt de convenciment. I la Boulder, que veu com la seva parella se li va esfilagarçant, es va convertint en una mena de monstre, que és una dona que no vol ser mare però que fa un sacrifici per amor i, per tant, d'alguna manera ha d'acabar-se construint com a mare. Però jo no crec que aquestes siguin les dues úniques maternitats possibles, sinó que crec que n'hi ha tantes com mares hi ha en el món. I que, a més, la maternitat és polièndrica, perquè, per exemple, jo, que he estat mare 2 vegades, m'identifico molt amb la Samsa. Jo he estat mare amb molt de convenciment i molt feliç, però, tanmateix, moltes vegades m'he vist a mi mateixa i m'he arribat a jutjar a mi mateixa amb els ulls de la Boulder, que és la que em mira i em diu què se n'ha fet de la teva essència, on estàs anant a parar, i on és l'Eva que jo coneixia, no? Per tant, el que es tracta és d'anar transitant per tots aquests prismes i intentar conèixer-los bé, els més lluminosos i també els més foscos.
That's very nice. Braided voice.
Oh dear.
Muscular conduit. Intimate enemy. What is the relationship between translator and author? Is it the relationship between light and dark, or sex and work, or any of the other binaries I have set up for you? And everything must be distilled into 2 words. We will eventually use the Booker Prize AI to generate a personality test for all of you to take. Yeah.
I don't see myself as a conduit. Sorry, I have to be closer to this microphone. I don't see myself as a conduit of my author's words. I tend to think of us as collaborators, which I think could be a version of intimate enemies, and also as possibly one of their most dedicated readers. I just take it a step further and then reversion what they've written into another language. Eva has used the term co-authorship quite a lot when we've spoken about the translation process, which feels like an honor to me as her translator, that she thinks of the English text as something that we've worked on so closely together. Depending on the book, I come up with different metaphors for translation. I feel like there are as many as there are mothers in the world.
Well, I have a related question, and in some ways it's the opposite question from the one that I asked Rosalind, which is, In this novel, we have a first-person narrator who, as Eva pointed out, is highly untrustworthy, highly erotically driven, and it produces an almost claustrophobic, like, liquidity to the narrative. You feel like you're swimming in the soup of someone's consciousness or something. How did you think about creating that, and how did you think, and what were the challenging parts of recreating that in English from Catalan?
There's a lot of, this is going to sound self-evident, but there's so much guidance in a book when you're working with an author who's an expert in what they're doing. And I felt very much safe in her hands. Like, I could follow her text and know exactly what she was doing. And one thing is that if you look at all of the paragraphs in the book, structurally speaking, is that they feel very airtight. They're these blocks of text that have a rhythm to them like a poem. Mm-hmm. And so the thing with Eva that can be a bit difficult to do, and I'm currently working on her third book in the triptych, is figuring out how to balance the poetry in her voice, because she's got this edgy, slightly sassy voice. The sometimes like her characters have the quality of the sometimes embarrassing friend you don't know if you should bring to dinner, because what is the argument that they're going to have with your friends with children, for example, or who work in banking.
Well, we don't have any of those friends. Come on now. Come on.
So I think there's a challenge in that, in balancing the poetry and the voice. And I think once I've figured out the voice and what words to choose, I think they tend to be a little bit sharper and poetic, but not like cloying. Mm-hmm. A lot of her metaphors are like long and intense, so you don't have to choose words that are too long and intense to deliver them.
So the translator is the slightly cringed out friend.
Oh dear.
Nope, it's what you're stuck with. Goodbye. Thank you.
To be clear, I love Boulder.
I do. Yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. Thank you so much. I had the option of going with best reader, but cringed out friends sounded a little bit better. Now, please, a warm welcome for Georgi Gospodinov and his translator Angela Rodel to read from Time Shelter.
Докато помниш, държиш миналото на страна, като да си запалил огън насред нощна гора. Наоколо са наклякали демони и вълци, зверовете на миналото стесняват кръга, но още не смеят да прекрачат. Алегорията е проста. Докато огъня на паметта гори, ти си господарят. Почне ли да загасва, воят ще се усилва и зверовете ще идват все по-близо, глутницата на миналото. Колкото по-малко памет, толкова повече минало. Малко преди края времената ще се смесят, защото клетките са отворени и всички ще изпълзят навън. Ако не са дните, в какво ще живеем, викаше един поет, как му беше името. А дни няма. Календарът се е саморазпуснал, има само един ден и една нощ, и те се повтарят вечно. Помня, за да държа миналото с миналото.
The less memory, the more past. As long as you remember, you hold at bay the times gone by, like lighting a fire in the middle of a forest at night. Demons and wolves are crouching all around. The beasts of the past are tightening the circle, but they still don't dare step into it. The allegory is simple. As long as the flame of memory burns, you are the master. If it starts to die out, the howling grows louder and the beasts draw closer, the pack of the past. Shortly before the end, the times get mixed up, because the cages have been opened and everyone will creep out. If it weren't for the days, where would we live, a poet asks. What was his name again? But the days are done. The calendar has dismissed itself. There is only one day and one night, and they repeat eternally. I remember so as to keep the past in the past.
Georgi, the title Time Shelter immediately evokes to me a bomb shelter, an enclosed place where you can hide from the violence of history. Yeah. Is time a safe hiding place?
Actually, when I invented this title, Time Shelter...
What is it in Bulgarian? It's
Времеубежище.
Okay. And you invented that word. Yeah.
I had this idea, okay, who from the young readers will know the word bomb shelter? Because you need to have this allusion to, as you said, to bomb shelter. And after that, when I published novel on 24 February last year, everybody knows already what is bomb shelter, actually. So I was wrong. Why time shelter? Because when we are living in a deficit of future, when future is cancelled, you don't have many directions to hide yourself. Mm-hmm. Usually you just change the direction and you started to look for the cave of the past, to hide into the past. And I wanted to write this novel like a warning that past could be a discrete monster. Mm-hmm. Actually, the cave of the past, time shelter of the past, mm-hmm. is good when you went down shortly in your personal past. But you should keep the door slightly open, not to lock it inside. But the past could be really dangerous when we want to get back the whole nation, the whole country, what we see now. Every war actually is dragging to the past.
Right. Well, for those of you who haven't read the novel, one of the plot points is that these past clinics in which people with dementia, Alzheimer's, can go relive their past or inhabit their past, those past clinics become weaponized by governments with xenophobic, nationalistic agendas who want to resurrect some idea of the good old days and make enemies out of the people in the present who threaten them. So how do we leave that door open? What do we do so that governments, like the governments of some of the places that people on the stage, for instance, come from, do not use the past as a weapon in their arsenal of violence?
I know in our countries we know this in a good way. We know with our own skin how past could be dangerous. By the way, I am from the generation which was paid with the check of the future, of the bright future. Right. Everyone during the communist time promised us a bright future. Now, 30 years later, or 30-something, the populists trying to sell me the paycheck of the past. And actually, don't believe to anyone who tried to sell you past or future. The checks are empty, they are baked with nothing. And so I wrote this novel also against the kitschy nationalism that you could find in our countries. But it's not just kitschy, it's not just aesthetic way. I love very much Brodsky. Brodsky said that future is propaganda. But the past could be also a propaganda. And what we could do, as a writer, I could tell my stories. I think that personal story still matters. I think that propaganda, because populists are very good storytellers, actually. And and we should be better than these populist storytellers. We should tell better our stories because propaganda is one-dimensional, let's say.
Right.
Literature is 2 or 3-dimensional thing. And I think that if you tell your stories in a good way and to show that the world is really complex, it's not something simple, black and white. And when you put the person in the center of your stories, I think that this works against the propaganda. We should create a small islands of resistance, a small islands of empathy. We don't have other chance. So please tell your personal stories. And you know Scheherazade, she tell her personal her story every night, and she gained one more day and one more day. And
She gained a future.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gains a future. Yeah.
And after that, the Shahryar was involved into love or into empathy, I don't know. Anyway, I really believe that our stories really matters. Yeah.
Angela, I will not ask you the same question that I've asked everyone else, or I won't ask it explicitly, because I think you provided me with an implicit answer backstage when you told me that you moved to Bulgaria to learn how to sing Bulgarian folk music.
Yes.
And in the spirit of the translator as a kind of singer of songs, could you perhaps regale us with a little tune?
Yeah, I think in this relationship, Georgi is definitely the cringed out friend, because I think we can say the universe has a sense of humor, that they would send him a translator who actually came to Bulgaria, because I love the folk tradition. And I think it's true, you will see how beautiful it is and how powerful and dangerous that can be. So, pozdrav za tebe, Georgi.
Thank you.
That's a lot of talking and not a lot of singing, Angela. Yeah.
Pole, pobe, ljava, mila mamo, pole, pobe,
I think, yeah, great.
But I think
Great, thank you.
So I can see, this is I think a good illustration of it's a very beautiful, very powerful tradition, and it's something that should definitely be preserved. But it's like Georgi said, it's a monster, it's like a vampire, it's sexy, it's seductive, but it can suck the life out of what's alive now if we don't think about our relationship to it, if we take it at face value and just perform this identity that can be tied to ideologies that can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Translator is singing vampire, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And last, but certainly not least, we will hear on screen from GauZ reading from Standing Heavy, and I will be joined on stage by his translator, Frank Wynne.
Quand sonne le portique? Le portique de sécurité sonne quand quelqu'un sort ou entre avec un produit qui n'est pas démagnétisé. Ce n'est qu'une présomption de vol et dans 90% des cas, le produit a été payé en bonne et due forme. Mais il est impressionnant de voir comment presque tout le monde obéit à l'injonction sonore du portique de sécurité. Presque jamais personne ne la transgresse. Mais les réactions divergent selon les nationalités ou les cultures. Le français regarde dans tous les sens, comme pour signifier que quelqu'un d'autre que lui est à l'origine du bruit et qu'il le cherche aussi, histoire de collaborer. Le japonais s'arrête net et attend que le vigile vienne vers lui. Le chinois n'entend pas ou feint de ne pas entendre et continue son chemin, l'air le plus normal possible. Le français d'origine arabe ou africaine crie au complot ou au délit de faciès. L'Africain se pointe le doigt sur la poitrine comme pour demander confirmation. L'Américain fonce directement vers le vigile, sourire aux lèvres et sacre entrouvert. L'Allemand fait un pas en arrière, un pas en avant pour tester et vérifier le système. L'Arabe du Golfe prend un air le plus hautain possible en s'arrêtant. Le Brésilien lève la main en l'air. Un jour, un homme s'est carrément évanoui. Il n'a pas donné sa nationalité. Voilà.
For whom the metal detector tolls. The walk-through metal detector tolls when anyone enters or leaves with an item that has not been demagnetized. It signals only hypothetical guilt, and in 90% of cases, the item has duly been paid for. But it's striking to note that almost everyone heeds the injunction of the security gate, and hardly anyone is insubordinate. That said, reactions differ according to culture or nationality. The Frenchman looks around as though somebody else is responsible for this noise, and he is just trying to help out in a spirit of collaboration. The Japanese customer stops dead and waits for the security guard to approach. The Chinese shopper does not, or pretends she does not hear, and continues on her way as nonchalantly as possible. The French citizen of Arabic or African ancestry accuses the device of conspiracy and probably racial profiling. The African jabs a finger at his chest as though seeking confirmation. The American rushes over with all his bags open, ready to be searched. The German takes a step back, a step forward, testing that this thing is actually working. The Gulf Arab adopts a lofty, supercilious expression and slowly comes to a halt. The Brazilian throws his hands in the air. Once, a man actually fainted. Sadly, he was unable to confirm his nationality.
The history of a person can match with the grand history. And as much as the grand history can match as the history of the small person. And it was obvious for me to divide these moments in these three ages, because it was like ages. Into the 60s, to the 60s, to the 80s, it is an age, after that, the things have changed so deeply that you can't compare. The 60s was like the l'âge de bronze, the bronze age, because they need Western people need immigrants. They need Africans to work on the factories, on the road, building the houses, because these Western savages were coming out from the World War II, They have broken their own countries, so they need some people from overseas to help them to rebuild this thing. And the rapport, the match with was different. The people coming from Africa were accepted in a certain way. Everybody can enter a Sephora, but not everybody can enter a Louis Vuitton. And everybody means rich people or poor people. Sephora has this large panel, large spectra, as you say, of large spectra of people who come entering. The guy from the project in Sarcelles can go to Sephora, as the old woman bourgeoise of the 16th arrondissement of Paris can go to Sephora too. And so that make like a place where people of all the class can meet classes, c'est ça? Of all, donc all the classes can meet. So, as an observer, it is a very wonderful place to be at an observer there, because everybody is, tout le monde est réuni dans la construction, dans la consommation. Everybody is everybody, yeah, something like that. Well, it is a meeting of consumers, and consumers are no identity, no nationality, no popular class or rich class or bourgeois class. A consumer is a consumer.
Well, I guess my first question for you, Frank, is he single?
I'm hoping. Let me ask you.
No, you don't get to do this.
Oh.
Just because we know each other, no. I guess this is when we can kind of spill tea about last year's Booker.
We could.
Yeah, all right. No, we won't do that. The excerpt that you read starts with "For whom the metal detector tolls," reference to Hemingway, of course, and humor, I would imagine, especially humor like GauZ's, very funny, punny, wisecracking, quick, and aphoristic, seems to me to be extremely difficult to translate. How did you work those puns?
Puns and wordplay generally, they don't defy translation, but you have to reinvent what you're doing. So, I mean, the original reference is a song. I'm referencing a Hemingway novel that I know everyone will recognize. And sometimes, as other translators will tell you, you have to shift the humor from this word to that word, from this sentence to that sentence, there's a wonderful thing that I'd love to have translated, but actually, I suspect very few people even reading the French would know. So in the Sephora section, there is a woman from the United Arab Emirates who arrives, and all of her dialogue is given in Arabic. So as a diligent translator, I got an Arabic translator to translate it for me. It's hilarious, but it bears no relation to what it actually says immediately afterwards. But I wasn't allowed to do that. No, quite a lot of it is what's important is that actually you get the pointedness of it. I mean, GauZ said that what he's interested, that a man who can laugh at things can rise above them because he truly understands them. If you cannot laugh at your predicament, if you cannot laugh at, what for him, because he was a security guard in Sephora, when he wrote, all the notes he wrote, he has a whole, unpublished diary of notes from Sephora. Sadly, he's lost it. But we have, it helps that I was living there sort of just before he was. So, a lot of the references are the same. But again, you swap out cultural references because what else are you going to do? This is one of those situations where he is a comic and I am implausibly a straight man.
The translator as a straight man, that is...
They're few and far between, let me tell you.
Well, I think I'm going to end on that note, Frank. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. That was wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, that was fun, wasn't it? That was fun. I had a really good time, and it has been a pleasure to share the last hour or so in the company of these very talented authors and translators who take us to so many extraordinary worlds with their stories. Can we just have one more round of applause for all of them? And thank you. You have been a wonderful audience, and thank you to everybody who joined us online. This says, if you've been inspired to pick up the shortlisted books, you have been inspired to pick up the shortlisted books. Foils will be selling the shortlist, as well as last year's winner, Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shri and Daisy Rockwell, in the foyer now. The authors and translators here tonight will be very happy to sign their books for you. If you want to find out more about any of the shortlisted books, there is a wealth of content at thebookerprizes.com, from high-profile actor readings and extracts to reading guides, personality quizzes, and interviews. The team at the Booker Prize Foundation would love readers to share their views about any of the books on their social channels, from Substack to TikTok, a very wide range of social channels there. And in just a few days, we will all find out which of these 6 books has won the International Booker Prize 2023. Do join the ceremony online at 9:45 p.m. on Tuesday, May 23rd, on any of the prize's social channels. I'm Maryse Emre. Thank you again. Good night. Get home safe.